Hello and welcome to Forever Motorsports here for our live news, our daily live news here. Let me just fix that quickly. I see I haven't changed the title. Show edits. Fix that. Nonetheless, yes, lots to talk about here today. We have, of course, Felipe Massa suing the FIA and Formula One over 2008. Let me just do studio mode. Over that lost Formula One title in 2008. Yes, of course, that is going to be very, very interesting for him to see whether he can take that back from Formula One and the FIA. He is seeking quite a lot of compensation for that. Then we also have Helmut Marko dropping major news about Daniel Ricciardo's 2024 plans, McLaren defending their sponsors, as well as Toto Wolff saying the season would be a lot better off without Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton is also facing some engineering decisions as the Ferrari temptation complicates his contract talks. So yes, quite a lot to talk about today. I'm going to try and fix up this title quickly while we are running. I'm still quite new to this, so still getting used to it. But nonetheless, it is, yes, a very interesting day ahead of us and a very interesting... there we go. I know how to fix it now. Quickly edit that. There it is now. So, yes, very, very exciting news and lots of news certainly to talk about here because of this major article about Felipe Massa with this lawsuit that him and his lawyers are taking up against the FIA and the old Ferrari bosses, not Ferrari bosses, Formula One bosses. So just reading this article here now, lawyers from former Ferrari driver Felipe Massa have started legal action against Formula One boss and the governing FIA, seeking substantial damages resulting from an alleged conspiracy that denied him the 2008 championship. A formal 8-page letter before claim, seen by Reuters, was sent to Formula One chief executive Stefano Domenicali and Paris-based FIA president Mohammed bin Sulayem on August 15th. This news then later broke yesterday evening. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get out a quick breaking news story, but nonetheless it is our story for today's live show. So carrying on with this article, such a letter is a required formal legal notice before court proceedings. London-based Enyo Law said Brazilian Massa, now 42, had been the victim of a conspiracy committed by individuals at the highest level of Formula One, together with the FIA and Formula One management. It is said that Massa has lost out on tens of millions of euros in lost earnings and bonuses as a result of another driver's deliberate crash at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix that was allegedly covered up before becoming a scandal in 2009. This was known as Crashgate, and wow, it really was a story that did shock the Formula One community. Just going on here, the crash that cost Massa vital points in a season where he ultimately lost out by a single point to McLaren's Lewis Hamilton, the first of the Britons, record equaling seven World Championship titles. Simply put, by Massa's lawyers, Mr. Massa is the rightful 2008 Drivers' Champion, and F1 and Formula One and the FIA deliberately ignored the misconduct that cheated him out of that title, said the letter. Mr. Massa is unable to fully quantify his losses at this stage, but estimates that they are likely to exceed tens of millions of euros. I mean, gosh, this is quite substantial to see a lawsuit coming for a lost championship because, of course, it was due to misconduct from the FIA and Formula One bosses. So he could have a leg to stand on really here for a court proceeding. Carrying on here, though, this amount does not cover the serious moral and reputational losses suffered by Mr. Massa, his lawyers went on to say. Massa sought legal advice, and after Formula One Supremo Bernie Ecclestone was quoted in March saying he and former FIA president Max Mosley knew in 2008 that then Renault driver Nelson Piquet's crash was deliberate, but had not acted. An FIA spokesperson said that the governing body acknowledged the receipt of correspondence from Massa's representatives and added, "The matter is under review and we will not be providing a comment at this stage." There was no immediate response from Formula One, which is on an August shutdown. Domenicali was previously Massa's team boss at Ferrari. Ecclestone, who is now 92 years old, told Reuters by telephone from Switzerland that he could not remember saying the key quotes attributed to him. In his quote, he says, "I don't remember any of this, to be honest." Well, to be fair, he is 92, said the Briton, who was replaced as F1 Supremo in 2017 after US-based Liberty Media took over as commercial rights holders of the Formula One group. I don't remember giving the interview for sure, said Bernie Ecclestone. I mean, I don't think he can remember what he had for breakfast or his latest girlfriend's name, to be very honest. Carrying on though about what caused all of this controversy, that was that crash from Nelson Piquet in 2008 at the Singapore Grand Prix, later known, of course, very, very famously known as Crashgate. Massa was leading the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix from pole position when fellow Brazilian Piquet crashed into the wall on lap 14 of 61. Notably, the crash triggered the safety car, which benefited Piquet's Spanish teammate Fernando Alonso, who went on to win that race. Massa failed to score after a bungled pit stop. So clearly it shows why Massa, of course, lost out on that race win, which would have led to him winning that championship that year. Piquet revealed in 2009 that he had been told to crash deliberately by Renault team bosses, who was subsequently banned from Formula One. I think that was Flavio Briatore, who was the one that told Nelson Piquet to crash. But yes, very, very interesting. In this year's interview, Ecclestone was quoted as saying he felt sorry for Massa, and this is the quote that Massa is pretty much taking all of these legal hearings about. Over this specific quote, "He was cheated out of the title he deserved, while Hamilton had all of the luck in the world and won his first championship." Massa told Reuters in May that he wanted justice. If the most important people from Formula One and the FIA knew in 2008 and didn't do anything, you think that was fair? It's not fair, he said. The lawyer's letter warned that without a satisfactory response, Massa intended to pursue legal action in order to seek compensation for the harm that he had suffered. He also wanted recognition that, but for those unlawful acts, he would have been awarded the 2008 championship. The lawyer said that in the absence of a in the absence of an substantive reply within 14 days, they expected to be instructed to commence legal proceedings in the English courts without further notice to you. Massa did not win again after 2008, with the Brazilian suffering a near-fatal head injury at the 2009 Hungarian Grand Prix. He then later retired in 2017. Mosley, who was the old FIA boss who worked closely with Ecclestone, died in 2021, while FIA race director Charlie Whiting, another key figure, passed away in 2019. It certainly is a big story, could have a lot of impact onto what happens with possibly Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen's title in 2021. I mean, I doubt that Lewis Hamilton would go to these lengths to take that championship back. But, I mean, it shows that it is a possibility. Well, of course, depending on what happens with Massa. It's certainly going to be very interesting to see what happens and how this unfolds, because this could be a story that really does shock the Formula One community, because I certainly didn't expect to see this happening. There was a few rumbles about it early on in the season, but I certainly did not seem to expect it to come to a head like this. Yes, well, it will be very interesting to hear what you all think in the comment section. Mark saying is it all based on conspiracy? Sounds like a conspiracy. Well, I mean, it's based on conspiracy, but it is pretty much a known that Nelson Piquet did crash on purpose, and if that crash did not happen, then Massa would have been 2008 world champion. I think what they really wanted to have was to have that Singapore race nullified in terms of points, because I think that would have allowed the season to be a lot more fair in terms of points, and of course because of that race being essentially fixed by Renault and Flavio Briatore and Nelson Piquet because of that forced crash. Just a few more comments here. This is a crazy story from James P. Imagine if he actually wins. Certainly, it's going to be very interesting to see how this does pan out. Mark also just commenting that you'd have countersuing from Hamilton over the Massa incident as well as Verstappen. Yes, it will be very interesting to see what does happen. Currently, our poll says, do you think Massa will win this legal battle? 20% saying yes, 80% saying no. Interesting to see that multiple people don't think that he has grounds to stand on. I certainly think that he could win this legal battle, but nonetheless, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Moving on, though, to our next article. Helmut Marko drops a major hint over Daniel Ricciardo's Formula 1 2024 plans. Helmut Marko has hinted that a full season at AlphaTauri in 2024 may be on the cards for Daniel Ricciardo if he performs in the second half of the season. Ricciardo was drafted in to replace the struggling Nick de Vries at Red Bull's junior squad after the British Grand Prix, with the Australian having rejoined Red Bull as their reserve driver prior to the 2023 season. The 8-time race winner is back with the Faenza-based team for the first time since 2013, as he looks to re-establish himself on the Formula 1 grid, and Red Bull Motorsports advisor Marko hinted that he may be there for a little while longer. Ricciardo himself has made no secret of the fact that he aims to put himself in the hunt to partner Max Verstappen at Red Bull in 2025, with the next season being the final year of Sergio Perez's contract with the team. Marko has acknowledged that he knows this is Ricciardo's target, but has hinted that he may well end up staying with the junior squad for a full season, with a rebrand from AlphaTauri set to be in the works, and Marko looking to bring the team as closely aligned to Red Bull as the regulations allow. The Red Bull Motorsport advisor also pointed out that there will be competition for those seats next season. However, of course, you have to know Daniel Ricciardo. You have to know from Daniel Ricciardo we know his goals, but how to achieve them. Whether he is ready to do a full year at AlphaTauri next year with full commitment, Marko told Motorsport magazine in Germany. Yuki Tsunoda has steadily improved in and of himself, has his emotions under control. I don't know about that. For the most part, he continues to say, is now also conditionally capable of driving through a Grand Prix. We have alternatives, for example, Liam Lawson, who is second in Japan and is very successful there and has made a big leap forward in his whole development since he's been driving in Japan. Ricciardo has been praised for how well he has performed since returning on the grid for 2 races, but being thrown in at the deep end, tackling one of the sport's most physical races in Hungary without much notice. Marko believes that the popular Australian's return has been good for the team as well as the sport, and think Daniel Ricciardo is already much closer to Tsunoda's level than Nick de Vries was performing. The change has had a very positive effect in terms of mood and motivation in the AlphaTauri squad, he has elaborated. While the gap of de Vries was on average 3 to 5 tenths, Ricciardo, if you adjust for all of that, is significantly less, if not on par with Yuki Tsunoda. He went on to say, we have 9 races left. In these 9 races, we will have, well, I don't know, but 9 is actually 10 races. We have 9 races though, he continues to say. In these 9 races, we will watch how it develops. Tsunoda has a very good race in Spa. Maybe in the middle sector, when it was raining a bit too much, maybe he could have had a better result. Daniel Ricciardo was not far away from the points in the sprint, and this direction fits. So, very interesting to see. We could see Daniel Rick sitting around for a little bit longer in that AlphaTauri seat, but he will be waiting to pick up the pieces from not only Yuki Tsunoda, his teammate, but also from Sergio Perez. He will be able to certainly pick up the pieces if Sergio Perez makes major mistakes yet again, like he did make in the first half of the season. Yes, going to be very interesting. Do you think that we could see Daniel Ricciardo in that AlphaTauri seat in the near future. I certainly think that, well, sorry, not the AlphaTauri seat, the Red Bull seat in the near future. I think it's going to be a big possibility because it does seem like he is getting his form back on track. I'm just going to change the poll now. Do you think, let me spell here, do you think Danny Rick could get the second Red Bull seat? Yes, the second Red Bull seat. Question mark. That is now live, so you can go and vote in that. So moving on to our next article now, also by planetf1.com. McLaren defend sponsor amidst call for livery ban. McLaren have defended their Velo sponsorship after several Dutch health organizations filed a complaint ahead of the Zandvoort race. Velo is, according to their website, a 100% tobacco-free nicotine pouch that offers a nicotine hit anytime, anywhere. A great alternative to traditional smoking. It's one of McLaren's title sponsors, British American tobacco products, that is aimed at moving away from cigarettes, but the sale of it was banned in the Netherlands in April over health concerns. All branding carried on McLaren's race cars fully complies with regulatory requirements, says the McLaren suit. But with this year's McLaren MTL60 carrying the sponsorship logo on the side pods, the Dutch Heart Foundation, KWF Cancer Fund, and the Lung Fund are going to the Advertising Code Commission in a bid to stop McLaren from advertising the snus product during the Dutch Grand Prix. It is, however, a grey area as legalization around the advertisement of snus pouches has yet to be signed off. KWF director Carla van Giels told the Telegraph, to sustain a sickening and deadly business, in our opinion, this is contrary to good taste and decency. Advertising expert Jan Driesen agrees, saying if you know that the bags are not allowed to be sold in our country, you shouldn't want to advertise them as an impactful brand. McLaren, though, have defended carrying the Velo logo on their cars, adamant it is within their legal bounds and within Dutch legalization. All brands carried on the McLaren race cars fully comply with regulatory requirements and advertising standards of each country we race in, a team spokesperson told Motorsports.com. Although cigarette adverts are banned in Formula One, teams continue to make millions from tobacco companies, with McLaren advertising BAT's Velo product, while Philippe Morris International sponsors Ferrari with their Mission Winnow branding at the moment. This made headlines earlier this year when Formula One industry monitor Formula Money and tobacco industry watchdog Stop claimed that in the fourth season of Netflix's Drive to Survive alone, there was a total of 1.1 billion minutes of footage streamed around the world that contained tobacco-related products. Research shows that PMI and BAT are reaching new audiences through the show, including people who don't otherwise watch Formula One races. Very interesting. I mean, of course, tobacco products were banned from being advertised in Formula One quite a few years ago, and this is an interesting way around that teams are using to get those sponsorships, because of course there's a lot of money in cigarette brands. Mark saying bring back Marlboro liveries. I agree, the Marlboro liveries of the past with Ferrari were just absolutely iconic. And I mean, I don't understand why, well, to be fair, I do understand why they don't want to have Marlboro slapped across the side of cars, because there is a younger audience nowadays in Formula One and they don't want to advertise, of course, smoking cigarettes, but they did provide some really, really iconic liveries in the past. But nonetheless, that was that article about McLaren. Moving on though to Toto Wolff. He says that the Formula One season this year would have been fantastic without Max Verstappen. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff believes that the current Formula One campaign would be a fantastic season without Max Verstappen. Although Red Bull has dominated the entirety of the year so far, most of the success has come through Verstappen, who has taken 10 wins from 12 races. The Dutchman currently holds a mammoth 125-point lead in the Drivers' Championship over teammate Sergio Perez, the Mexican enjoying 2 Grand Prix victories this year. But Perez has struggled through a self-confessed rough patch of form. failing to advance into the final qualifying segment on 5 consecutive occasions between the Monaco and British Grand Prix. Red Bull has largely been unchallenged, but behind a number of teams have possessed the second fastest car at interchanging events, with Mercedes sitting second in the constructors' standings with a 51-point advantage over Aston Martin. Take Max out of the equation, and Perez is in second place, 40 points ahead of Fernando Alonso, who holds a slim 1-point advantage over the 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. Amid complaints that the season is too predictable, Wolff concedes that this year would be much more enjoyable if Verstappen wasn't in the Red Bull RB19. Yeah, I think you just need to take Max out of the equation, he told media, including Racing News. The second Red Bull is where we are. It would be fantastic. It would be a fantastic season and close racing, but you know, the stopwatch never lies. There's just one guy in the car that is above everyone else, and we have just got to catch up. There is no more choice. And I mean, that is the truth. As I spoke about yesterday in my news show, Red Bull believe that they are the average car this season, and I think we can see that with Sergio Perez. Max Verstappen, of course, is just performing above and beyond. But yes, they just have an average car. Everyone else has seemed to just drop the ball a little bit in terms of their development for the 2023 season, and that unfortunately has caused them to not be able to challenge with the likes of Red Bull this season. I mean, it does spark a lot of debate though, because, I mean, no one really said this. Well, people did say this, of course, during Lewis Hamilton's winning streak with Mercedes, but there's been a lot of talk, especially from the Mercedes camp, complaining about the fact that now Red Bull are dominating. It's only their third consecutive season winning the drivers championship, but I mean, we had Mercedes doing it for 7 years in a row, and I mean, I think it's a little bit hypocritical for them to be complaining a bit too much about Red Bull being dominant when they were dominant for 7 years in a row. Nonetheless, though, it of course, we don't want to see Max Verstappen winning every race. Yeah, it's just how the sport goes, though. We do see it coming in cycles. I did speak about it as well yesterday. It comes in cycles, how we have these drivers just being able to take these world championships so dominantly because they either have a very dominant car or they are just performing in the absolute peak of their career. Mark just saying, LOL, Toto complaining about Verstappen's dominance, but was all too happy when Hamilton was doing it. Yes, and I mean, Hamilton also said a little bit earlier, I saw an article on Twitter, that he was also complaining about the predictability of Verstappen's dominance, but also said in his Mercedes dominance era that it does get a little bit boring for the fans. So he does understand that he did have a dominant era, but I still don't necessarily think that he should be commenting on Max Verstappen's dominant era at the moment, because he, of course, did have his own one for multiple years on end. Yeah, very interesting debate though that could be brought about from this conversation. Yes, well, moving on to the final article that I have here. Lewis Hamilton is facing an engineering decision as Ferrari temptation complicates contract talks. So for all we thought that Lewis Hamilton was finished with his contract talks with Ferrari, apparently there is still a little bit of rumors going around that it may not be 100% doors closed. So, reading this article here now, could Lewis Hamilton be tempted to make a switch to Ferrari to see out his Formula 1 career? It will take a strong argument from Maranello, says former F1 racer. With the 2023 season heading into its second half, when the action resumes next week at Zandvoort, there is still no clarity on what Lewis Hamilton will be doing next year. The Mercedes driver is without a contract for next season, with talks and negotiations dragging on for several months, but despite both sides indicating a willingness to continue. But rumours have swelled all year round that Ferrari are trying to lure the 7-time World Championship, adding to the uncertainty what will happen with his contract. The 3-time Le Mans winner, LMP2 winner, David Kennedy weighed in on the ongoing delays between Mercedes and Hamilton as he spoke to PlanetF1.com at Mondilla Park last weekend, and shed some light on the thought process of a driver starting to think about life after a top-level career. I think when a driver knows that he is getting to the end of his career and he's seen the depth at Mercedes have in engineering. He's seen the finances. They've got the mindset changes a little bit. They've got the mindset changes a little bit, he said. You think, well, this is going to be a really good ticket to retire on, that I can be a Mercedes representative and enjoy my retirement with the same family and the same team. Given the length of time that he's been there and the relationships that you build up between the press team and the engineering team, as well as the design team, it's a lot to step away from. If there was a team winning and he could step into a winning team, leaving would maybe be understandable, but there's nobody other than Max Verstappen and Red Bull doing that at the moment, and he's not going to step in alongside Max Verstappen, that's for sure. I mean, that would be pretty interesting to see Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton line up at Red Bull. I certainly don't think that will ever happen, because those two have way too much of a personality clash, and there would just be absolute mayhem in that Red Bull garage. Nonetheless, though, carrying on here, given the length of time that he's there and the relationships that you build up, I've read that already. So where's he got to go? He's got all the resources, he's got the track record and the pedigree. I'm sure there are things every now and then where he thinks, God, wouldn't it be nice to finish at Ferrari? There's always that little appeal. I'll finish off as a Ferrari driver. That may be the only thing that might entice him to do something different. But I really can't see him stepping out anywhere other than where he is, unless Ferrari makes some really sizable offers somewhere along the line. David Kennedy says, if I was Lewis Hamilton, I would give serious thought to the Ferrari switch. Kennedy went on to address the recent suggestion that Ferrari chairman John Elkann has made a move directly to try tempting Hamilton to the Scuderia outfit, as well as team boss Fred Vasseur trying to turn British drivers' head away from Mercedes. Any driver that has done well, what he's done against all odds, would be the most fabulous swan song of a career, he said. He knows Fred well, and Fred will know how to couch his argument for a race driver in engineering terms, what we can do, how we can do it, and why we're better, which is just a big risk, which is just a big ask against Mercedes. But it might just tickle his fancy. If I was Lewis Hamilton, I would seriously contemplate it. I don't think it's the money. I think it's the argument that Ferrari can take to Lewis to show why, on those parameters, it is a better program. Asked whether he sees the relationship between Mercedes and Hamilton as having cooled off to the point where contract negotiations have become trickier, Kennedy agreed. When you're not winning, everything cools, he said. If you're prepared to risk your life driving a racing car, you want to win. Anything outside of that cools because you're not winning. I mean, cool in terms of, I'm not happy with where I am. He thinks he should be winning races, so how does he do that? Part of that coolness may be down to Mercedes seeing Hamilton's performance level starting to dip. The Mercedes driver will be 39 at the start of next year's campaign, and the Irish driver believes his age will now be a factor in the negotiations. I will tell you who is making a decision here, he said. The engineers will run the telemetry across all their performances over the last couple of years, and they will tell you by what amount that performance has dropped. They can equate that, and whether they put a value on it financially, that's another decision. But they'll see qualifying drop by X percentage, race pace drop by X percentage, and mistakes gone up by X percentage. You don't get quicker when you get older. There are no miracles in this business, not yet. And he's been damn close to having a miracle in being able to produce what he has produced. So very interesting to hear that, I mean, from David Kennedy. It's certainly a lot to talk about in the fact that could Lewis Hamilton move somewhere else? Could Ferrari make a big offer to Lewis Hamilton to move? Could Ferrari make a big offer to Lewis Hamilton to move across to the Scuderia outfit? I mean, it certainly will be a big challenge from Lewis Hamilton if he does decide to go across to Ferrari, because at the moment they really are not doing very well. They are certainly struggling in terms of pace. They're, I think, only fourth in the Constructors' Championship at the moment, which is dismal for Ferrari. I mean, we spoke about it at length yesterday. Mark saying Lewis is going to leave Merc, ignore Ferrari, and fight for the mega team in Formula One. Haas. Mark, I think that's a bit far-fetched. I don't see that ever happening with the likes of Lewis Hamilton. But nonetheless, it's certainly a big discussion to have whether we could see Lewis Hamilton moving away from Mercedes. I don't see why he would want to, though, because he's been with the team for so many years now. He's built a good race car. He's built relationships, as the article does say, and I don't necessarily see why he would want to take a risk going to Ferrari and ending his career on a bad note. Just starting a new poll here. And that is now posted. So please do be sure to vote in that. But, I mean, I personally, I don't see Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari. I think it's a bit of a far-fetched shout. I think there's just a bit too much work for him to do there. It's, yeah, I think seeing their pace of the last, gosh, I want to say few years. It's not even the last few years. Their last championship win was 2007. So I really don't think Lewis Hamilton would be very interested in making that move across purely because of that. Yeah, there would be a lot of work to do. I mean, Michael Schumacher, of course, has done it in the past and has brought Ferrari back to their winning ways, but I don't think Lewis Hamilton has the time that Michael Schumacher had in the beginning of his Formula One career. It's a lot to ask for Lewis Hamilton to be able to bring Ferrari back to their winning ways, because I don't think fundamentally it's just from an engineering standpoint. I think there's a lot in the back end of Ferrari's management that needs to be changed, because they have just seemingly become a lot more complacent, which in Formula One is like a death sentence, really, if your team becomes complacent, because they just decide, we're good enough, we're Ferrari, why do we need to push so hard anymore? I want to see that drive coming back from Ferrari, but I don't necessarily think that Lewis Hamilton wants to be the one pushing that change. But nonetheless, please do be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Formula One content coming our way. There will still be some more possibly coming throughout the day, whether there's breaking news or any more small articles that I do find throughout the day. I will be keeping you updated. Please do be sure also to follow me on Twitter at Reece FM1 for all of the latest Formula One news and updates, as well as I post all of our videos that do go live. Nonetheless, thank you very much for joining me here today. I've been Reece here on Forever Motorsports. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers.